My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff, and for Chris Crock. Chris is back this Thursday night. I'm on tomorrow and Wednesday night. He's back in the chair Thursday night as he fills in for Casey Bartholomew, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. here on WBAP the next 2 days. TikTok's been under attack for 4 years, and the talk has been the government and government as a whole has told us that they want to ban TikTok in America because it's a Chinese company owned and it presents a national security threat. And my question is this, and I challenge the government to this. I want to know, what does the government know about TikTok that they're not sharing with me? What do they know they're not sharing with you? What does the U.S. government want? Why does the U.S. government want to ban TikTok other than telling us it's a national security threat? Because we have a lack of belief and trust and visibility and transparency of the government. And I say, is there really a significant national security threat? Because if there is, then why did the Biden administration and the Trump administration both sign up and use TikTok through the election cycle? And quite honestly, one could argue part of the reason Donald Trump won the election is because of TikTok. Trump used social media that those under 40 use predominantly. Podcasts were part of it, but TikTok was one of those too. So if TikTok is such a national security threat, then how come for the last 18 months we've been beat over the head, those of you on TikTok, with content from the Biden-Harris campaign and from the Trump-Vance campaign? So if TikTok is such a significant national security threat, why are they using it? Why is it both parties tell us it's a danger? And that's on the heels of the news today. And that is the story I saw just a little while ago, that China hacked the Treasury Department in a major breach, according to the United States. A state-sponsored actor in China, they call it a state-sponsored actor in China, hacked the U.S. Treasury Department, gaining access to the workstations of government employees and unclassified documents. That's according to the Biden administration today. Now, in a letter informing lawmakers of the episode, the Treasury Department said that it had been notified on December 8th by a third-party software service company, it's called Beyond Trust, that's the name of the company, that the hacker had obtained a security key that allowed it to remotely gain access to certain Treasury workstations and documents on them. And my question is, if China is such a true national security threat, then the next stupid question is this. Again, just common. I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I'm not a book smart guy. I'm just common sense kind of guy. What is the national security threat? Is there really? I question whether or not there truly is. I'm not buying it until somebody can prove it, that there really is a national security threat. Because if there was a true, real blue national security threat to TikTok because it's China owned and operated, then why did both political parties use TikTok through the year? If you can answer, please call me and tell me. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. My phone number is 800-288-WBAP. 288-WBAP. You can also hit me up across social media on Facebook, on X, on Instagram, at Westside Jeff. So if it's truly a national security threat, as we're being told, then my next question is this. I had to go back and look of how much retail is generated in this country. What are we as consumers buying that is manufactured in China? If we're talking again national security threat, if we're talking again like today's events, that China hacked the Treasury Department and had access to computers, okay? If China or any institution, whether it be a country like China or a cybersecurity threat, can access social media like TikTok to gain access to our thought process, into the narrative, into the media landscape, then they certainly can get into my TV. They certainly can get into my phone. They certainly can get into my car and my chips and the vehicles, the operating system, right? There's so many other things they can get into. I had to look and see, what do we manufacture in China? So I went to a site, Geeks for Geeks. I found this many different places. The list of American products made in China. Let's start with iPhones. Apple's iconic smartphones, including the iPhone 13, are manufactured in China, with assembly plants operated by companies like Foxconn. Now, if TikTok is such a national security threat to the United States of America, then why do we allow Apple, iconic company Apple, to manufacture smartphones, the iPhone 13 and others, in China? What else? Well, Dell, leading computer technology company, manufactures a range of laptops, desktops, and other electronics in China to meet global demand and benefit from the country's manufacturing infrastructure. Again, if China is such a significant national security threat, then why do we have Dell manufacturing computers in China? What about Xbox consoles? Microsoft's gaming consoles, including the Xbox Series X and Xbox One, are manufactured in China, where production facilities handle assembly and distribution for the global marketplace. What about HP printers? A leading provider of printers, other computing devices, operates manufacturing facilities in China to produce printers and related accessories for global consumers. Those are just four of the big companies that produce major products that are consumed and purchased and sold in the United States of America. So if TikTok is truly a national security threat, and the news today across multiple sites, the state-sponsored actor in China hacked the U.S. Treasury Department, gaining access to workstations and government employees and unclassified documents. That's according to the Biden administration. If truly China is such a national security threat, then why do we still sell iPhones in the United States of America? Why do we still have Dell computers in the U.S.? Why do we have Xbox and HP printers? Because they're manufactured in China. My 2 cents worth on the whole story. I'm talking about the story out of today, and that is China hacked Treasury Department in a major breach, according to the United States government. This came out today from the Biden administration. A state-sponsored actor in China hacked the U.S. Treasury Department, gaining access to the workstations of government employees' unclassified documents, according to the Biden administration. That occurred on December 8th by a third-party software. This was announced by a third-party software service company called Beyond Trust. They say that the hacker obtained a security key that allowed it to remotely gain access to certain Treasury workstations and documents on them. On the heels of that, there's a lot of talk, and we did the story in Top of the Hour News with Sean Allen and John Ingham about TikTok potentially being outlawed the day before Trump's elected. And my question is this: if TikTok is truly a national security threat like our government tells us it is, then why is it both parties used it through this entire election cycle incessantly, the whole time? There was no pullback, nothing. If it's so dangerous, why'd they use it? And if it's so dangerous, then why do we have so many Chinese engineered, built, manufactured products still on our market, on our shelves? And I'm talking about the iPhones. I'm talking about Dell computers, Xbox consoles, and HP printers. My 2 cents worth, my common sense is this. Number one, we don't trust the government. I don't trust them. I don't trust what's coming out of government to be accurate and full disclosure and transparent. I haven't for the last several years. Hopefully that changes in my mind with the Trump administration. I don't look at it and go, oh, yeah, the government's being truthful and honest with us, because I don't think so. And then secondly is, you know what is a real, more of a security threat to me, national security threat, than China? You know what my bigger security threat is? The national reporting media. Because the media become a public relations arm to the Democratic Party. And we now know over the last several years, all the things that they've tried to spoon feed us, all the stuff they've lied to us about. Going back to when Trump got blown out the last election and the whole COVID thing, that's more of a national security threat to me than China, because that hits home. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. I want to hear your thoughts, your comments, your opinion. You've heard mine. You can hit me up at 800-288-9227. That's 800-288-WBAP, like Chris from Keller. Chris, thanks for listening to the Chris Crock Show. You're talking to Jeff, Westside Jeff. What's your opinion?
Yeah, well, the whole TikTok thing, I think the government is using it because, if the left is going to use it, the right feels compelled to, because they got to be on the same footing with the people that are on TikTok, and they're hypocrites like they've always been. That's why we can't trust anything they say. But I do believe TikTok is a bad thing, and I think we should ban it. I had heard through some of the tech forums that I'm on that the end-user license agreement for the application for TikTok requires access to be able to see all the content, like the other apps, and app content and app data on your phone for the other apps as well. And it can collect a lot of data about you and create a digital ID. Also, it requires, it basically notifies you that it's going to go out and detect everything else on the network, every network that it's built on. And with that kind of data circulating, that would give China a really good understanding of our overall network for like every home and business and everything else. And I told my kids, you're not allowed to. No, I'm not having that in my house. And my daughter did it anyways. And within minutes, I have a network monitoring software. That app lit up my network. And so,
Chris, is that any different than what we experience in Facebook? Is that any different than other social media platforms, really?
It's not that different. No, I mean, it is different because it's a different degree. Like, Facebook doesn't go and look at app data for other apps, and it doesn't go and look for other identities on the network and try to identify the different computers on the network that you're attached to.
Are you within? Do you work in an environment in the tech field that you're speaking from an experience of detailed experience?
Yeah, I started building computers when I was 7, and I was Novell admin certified at 16, and then U.S. Navy Network Administration and all of that. So
okay, I trust you on that. I'm just thinking from a network engineering standpoint. I'm not that smart. Something tells me there's not a lot of significant difference between an app like TikTok and some of the other ones, other than the fact that maybe TikTok is owned by some company in China versus Mark Zuckerberg, who owns Facebook, or Jack, what's-his-face, that used to own Twitter. Now it's Elon Musk with X. That we're supposed to trust our American counterparts because they're Americans versus the Chinese counterparts. My common sense just tells me there's more to it than that.
Facebook does try to do network pings. I have them blocked on my network, but it's 1 per minute. Windows does like 3 per minute. Amazon devices like Echoes do a ping every 10 seconds. TikTok was doing them every single second and doing network scans to try to look for other devices on the network.
But in the end, they're both all those devices, all those apps, all those software devices are getting the same kinds of information. You're just telling me that TikTok gets it more depth and
more invasive.
There. Yeah, so they're getting more because it's faster, right?
They're actually trying to get more, whereas Facebook is just trying to who's online. They're trying to see what videos are being watched to get viewing counts and whatnot. And I'm sure they're doing more than that, but from what I can see occurring on my network, it's not dramatically more. Like it's passing just enough data to be able to keep up with that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Chris, thank you for calling.
Blew that out of the water. And the whole why do we allow iPhones?
Yeah.
I think it's because if you did anything about it, it would hurt our economy, and they cannot afford to do that. And the Chinese rules are, if you want to sell your product in our country, we have to know how it's made because it has to be built in our country.
Yep, I get that and understand that. And that's the part of China I disagree with is we have companies in our country that pay a lot of money for intelligence and building out things that, to your point, they ask full transparency, visibility, and side of me says no. I wouldn't even go there. I wouldn't give it to you. I don't care how much revenue it is. Chris, thank you for
Steve Jobs and everybody. They couldn't say no to that because they wanted in that market because there's way too much money, and it's enticing because it's such a huge market. And I think all of our companies have sold themselves out to that.
Well, if we're gonna ban TikTok because it's a national security threat, I say we got to, honest goodness, if the government's going to play kingmaker in essence and say no to TikTok, they need to say no to iPhones. They need to say no to Dell computers. They need to say no to Xbox. They need to say no to the other ones also because they're just maybe not as exactly invasive. But if it's invasive and a threat to American institutions, then my attitude is it's probably the same with those other products. Chris, thank you for calling. I appreciate your input on that. I'm not a smart guy. I appreciate those you and network engineer type guys who get it and understand it. I want to continue this conversation after the bottom of the hour news. Coming up in about 3 minutes, 2.5, 3 minutes, we got Sean Allen, John Ingham in the newsroom with an update on these stories and more. On the other side of it, I see Gregory from South Lake and a couple more callers we'll get to next. My name is Jeff, Westside Jeff, in for Chris Crocker, News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM, WBAP. The leagues, NFL, NHL, and NBA have warned their professional athletes about targeting crime rings, these organized crime rings, targeting famous athletes while they're out competing in sports. I've got a solution to that. I'll tell you again, I'll be the guy. You know what? I'll take one for the team. I'll help you out. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff sitting in for Chris Crock. I'm here tonight. I can't help you tonight or tomorrow night or New Year's night because I'm on the radio. But on Thursday night, Chris Crock comes back to this chair. And I'll tell you what, starting Thursday when Chris is back and I'm not on the radio again, I'll come to your home for Luka or Dak or any of the professional athletes listening to me right now. Hell, I'll do it for Jerry Jones or Mark Cuban. Any of you really, really rich folks that are worried about when you're out of town, you can't protect your home, I'll come to your home. You pay me a little stipend to do it. I'll give me access to your Wi-Fi so I can do my regular day job and night job there in your home. I may make my own pizza. I'll stock the fridge full of Diet Coke. Like to bring my 2 dogs with me, and if there's any activity in and around your house, my dogs will go nuts and start barking. Give me a 9mm or something like that, and I will. I hear something, I'll shoot first. I'll ask questions later, and I promise you, I'll protect your gear. I will. Just pay me a little stipend if you got that kind of money. If you don't want to lose, listen. If you don't want to lose $30,000 or $40,000 in merchandise out of your house, tell you what, make me a deal. Pay me half of that. Give me just a third of it. Give me a third of the $30,000. Give me $10,000. I'll babysit your house while you're gone. I'll stay out of your way while you're there. I'll live in another room. You'll never see me, never know me, and I promise you, I'll protect you. Cost you a third of the money it will just for the loss of merchandise, and you won't have to replace broken windows and broken doors and stuff like that. And I guarantee you, there won't be any problem with me when I'm there with me and the dogs and my pizza and Diet Cokes. I'll protect it. That's my solution. And common sense solutions to real life problems. That's what it provides you. Westside Jeff in for Chris Crock. We're also talking about TikTok in China. We've been warned that China is a national security threat, which is why they want to ban TikTok. And I argue that if I don't believe the government when they tell me that, I really don't. I just don't. You can tell me what you want. I don't believe it. Because if I really thought that China was such a national security threat, our government would not allow iPhones to be produced in China. Our government would not allow Dell computers to be produced in China. Our government would not let Xboxes be produced in China, and the same with HP printers. and we just took a caller a moment ago. It was Chris from Keller that in essence said, you know what, there's too much money involved in iPhones, Dell computers, Xbox, and HP printers to ban those, but TikTok's a different animal. Oh, so now you're telling me it comes down to the almighty dollar. Now we're talking. I just think there's more to it than that. My name's Jeff, Westside Jeff, in for Chris Kroc. Let's check in with Gregory, who called me at 800-288-WBAP. Gregory from Southlake. How the heck you doing tonight, man? Thanks for calling.
I'm doing great, Chris. Happy New Year to you and yours.
Thank you.
The reason both presidential campaigns use TikTok is because that's where the people are. But it is a national security threat. I'm a retired IT executive. I've written 1 million lines of code, so I know a lot of this stuff inside and out. And the problem with TikTok is not only, as the last caller has said, does it require that you give it access to all of your information, okay, which allows once they get all this stuff back to the Chinese servers to start building network associations. But think about this. This is a piece of software. Now, every piece of hardware, every operating system and so forth, they all have defects. That's why there are security updates put out regularly. But let's say TikTok finds a way to, for example, overload your phone, okay, so that it can make the battery explode, okay? Just like the Hezbollah takedown that
Sure.
Israel did. Now, there they intercepted the devices and planted bombs inside of them. But a cell phone battery exploding isn't a lot of fun. They could just even make it overheat to the point where it would give you a really severe burn. Okay? So there are a lot of other issues with this, besides the fact that they're able to build very detailed networks of people and the connections between people and so forth that they might be able to use to exploit for bribery or subversion or other things like this. The other thing is TikTok viciously censors anything that is anti-Chinese on their network.
And that's different than Facebook and American government stuff. How? Remember the censorship around COVID?
No, I hear you. Okay, but they viciously censor anything that's anti-Chinese, and they've come up with ChatGPT recently, or OpenAI Foundation, last year shut off TikTok's ByteDance's account because they were stealing information from OpenAI, and they used it to build their own large language model AI called Doubao, DOUBAU, okay? That was actually being used on certain of these e-paper tablets that people were buying. And a recent analysis of one of those found that AI is basically just Chinese propaganda. That's also, so you ask it any question about, problems in China or anything like that, it comes back with an answer that says, oh, no, that's all lies, China's wonderful, blah, 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 okay? And TikTok also feeds that kind of propaganda to kids in the U.S., okay? So the fact that it's a piece of software that we don't control and we can't examine, that it could do damage to hardware, that it could exploit network connections between different people or even between different machines. You leave your Bluetooth on, God knows what it could do with that, right? Okay? And
Gregory, answer one question for me, if you would. Is
Sure.
what you're talking about with TikTok and the Chinese controlled empire with that, is it dramatically, not a little bit, dramatically different than anything that we're facing in this country with Facebook, X, Instagram, other systems that have digital connections to our homes and our devices? Is it dramatically different than anything else that we already have?
Yeah, Facebook, Instagram, and so forth don't have nuclear weapons.
Okay.
There's one thing you need to think about, okay?
Okay.
But let me give you another piece of information that I think is very important because
Make it quick. I got to hit a break in about a minute.
The Chinese economy is collapsing, and you may see the CCP fall in 2025, just like the Soviet Union did. Because it's the grip is slipping, and it may just completely collapse. If you want to hold me over the break, I'll give you more information on that if you want, because that's a story I've been following for quite some time.
That's all right. I gotta hit a break. I got several other callers, and I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate your opinion, and I thank you for calling and sharing that. So thank you very much. Got to hit a quick break. I see Sandra on the phone from Fort Worth. We'll get to you. Sandra, sit tight. I'll get to you right after the break with your opinion on this. My question is TikTok that dramatically different? Gregory says yes. I'm not a smart guy, but my common sense tells me it's not dramatically different than what we're dealing with. And my bigger concern about a national security threat to America is the national reporting media bigger than the Chinese. That's my 2 cents worth. The Treasury Department said that it had been notified on December 8th by a third-party software service company called Beyond Trust that the hacker had obtained a security key that allowed it to remotely gain access to certain Treasury workstations and documents on them. In addition to that, we're talking about TikTok. TikTok's been under attack now for several years. Trump filed a brief on Friday that he said he wants the Supreme Court to step in and set that aside because it's supposed to go out of circulation in the U.S. the day before inauguration. He wants to get involved in that. I appreciate the call from Gregory from Southlake and Chris from Keller saying, yeah, TikTok is different and Chinese are different. And while I was during the break, I started thinking about something that occurred. I looked at a list of companies that had ransomware attacks in 2024. I could spend the next 90 minutes telling you the names of those companies. I'm not going to do it. We don't have that amount of time. But these companies' significant ransomware attacks have come from many different entities. And according to everything I've read, many of them are from overseas. And none of them specifically say China or Russia. That's not been confirmed. If they would, they'd go after them. But I can give you a few names of companies that might stick out to you and you recognize. Just in September, Kawasaki Motors in Europe. In August of 2024, my hometown, Columbus, Ohio, the city of Columbus, where I was born and raised, kind of lied about it, didn't tell anybody about it until the media started doing they had a whistleblower, called them out, and it affected like 1 million people or so. Sumter County, Florida was one. AT&T was one. Rite Aid Pharmacy, Panera Bread, CDK Global, an industry I'm familiar with that does everything from a software basis within car dealerships. There was an entire month or two that automobile dealerships couldn't operate as normal because there were ransomware attacks. Listen, a lot of those ransomware attacks are coming from overseas. Some of them from probably Chinese entities, maybe some Russian entities. I don't know what. I just say that security threats are real. You have to do what you can to protect it. You can't guarantee against them. And I just call BS on our government for saying China's the huge national security threat when our government entities are using TikTok. Something just doesn't add up right to me. I think there's more security threats than just China. Yes, it is a security threat. But my belief is that social media platforms, i.e. Instagram, Twitter, now X, Facebook, some of those don't have a whole lot different entity, am I saying it right, than TikTok. And my bigger threat to America and Americans and the threat to democracy is really, to my opinion, the national reporting media has become a Democratic PR arm for the Democratic Party. That's my thought. It's Westside Jeff, and for Chris Kroc. Chris is back on Thursday night. You want to weigh in? 800-288-9227, like Sandra from Fort Worth. That's 800-288-WBAP. Sandra, thank you for holding. I'm sorry to keep you on hold so long. What's your opinion?
Well, I'm 77, and I'm a widow now. And all this tech stuff is driving me crazy. I love what you're talking about tonight. I think it's very dangerous, but it comes down and affects everybody personally. I can't find a job because you have to apply online. And I don't have a computer because I don't want one. But people tell you to go to the library and apply online. Well, why would I put my personal information on that?
Especially in a library.
Friend. Yeah. They say, well, do it with a friend. Well, I don't know what somebody does. I don't have anybody I can trust in my life. I don't have a family. So I don't know what they do with their computer. But it's horrible, and I'm terrified of this stuff. Those QR codes are everywhere, and people willingly just scan take their phone up and scan it. Well, you don't know what what they're getting. You don't know what they're doing. When they want something from you, they would tell you if they wanted you to know, they would tell you what it is, and they don't. And the mentality of this sheep thing, where people just keep going after more and more. And I want to know, is my Apple 11 made in China?
I'm not sure about that. I have to spend a little more time on that, and I can't do that while I'm sitting here talking on the phone. But I did look up, or talking on the radio, I did look up about products that are made in China, and I found a couple sites that verified the iPhone 13 is. And you know what? Gregory called a little while ago and said that these devices, TikTok could heat up your battery and make it explode. I don't know if that's correct or not, but I just think that there's the iPhones, the iPhone 13 and more that we buy in this country that are made and produced in China. Nobody can convince me anything differently that those aren't as much of a security threat as TikTok. I'm not buying it. I just can't. There's a lot within that space that I can't understand and never will. And I just think I'm just not a trusting person on that, just like you. And to your point,
I'm terrified because I'm trying to make friends and meet people and do things with people, and they use technology to diss you. They say,
hide behind technology
and text me, and then you text them and you never hear from them again.
Yep,
so
I get it.
They say it to put you off. They say it to diss you.
Hide behind technology, Sandra. Thank you for calling, and thank you for weighing in.
Thank you.
You bring up another interesting topic I talk about every now and then. Ageism is for real. Trust me, I worked for a big radio broadcasting company for 36 years and 3 months. Not this company of Cumulus, but a different one. And I was let go. I call it fired. They call it RIFT, Reduction in Workforce, on my 59th birthday. And it took me really a year and a half, 2 years to get my footing back mentally and emotionally to get over that, because I loved my job and I was a performer, and my boss stood up for me and said to his boss, this is a bad decision. We can't let him go. It'll cost us money and cost us a lot of things. But they did it anyways because they didn't care. And I got fired because I was the old white guy, quite honestly. Ageism is real. It's a whole nother issue, but thank you for calling. Thank you for your opinion. Got to hit top of the hour news with Sean Allen and John Ingham in the newsroom with update on these stories and more. On the other side of that, I want to talk about tomorrow night. It's New Year's Eve. I want to know what you do and how it changed New Year's Eve in the last 10, 15 years. My opinion's simple. I don't like New Year's Eve. It's not because I don't like fun. The best fun I ever had in my life was spontaneous. New Year's Eve is forced fun.